I'm going to start by giving warning that this video contains anatomical innuendos of a somewhat sexual nature. I'd like to add that feminine and masculine traits discussed are metaphorical. That's why it's often pointed out that this isn't related to gender. I was sipping on a smoothie one morning that consisted of peaches, protein powder, and ice, and my inner being spoke to me and said, "You're both the smoothie." I sat there briefly, questioning if it was a random thought or if it was my intuition, which I knew it was my intuition. I could feel it. But it was just such a strange thing to hear. Then I heard, after that pause, "You're the peach, he's the protein," meaning me and my twin flame. So if you're like me, when I get downloads, sometimes my brain, actually a lot of times, I have to think on it, and I often meditate for better understanding. So when this happens, it often takes a while for my brain to process it. This was definitely the case here. It actually took me a couple of months, and I still may not have it all because that's just how it sometimes goes, just a little at a time so my brain can understand it. At first I thought peach, protein, and I laughed to myself and thought, no pun intended. But then my higher self, and I can totally see this, my higher self said, yes, pun intended. Okay, so if I'm the peach, meaning I represent the feminine one, and the protein means he represents the masculine, so what of it? I already figured that, though just after awakening to my other self, there were times that I questioned it, like if I was predominantly masculine energy. Part of that had to do with my conditioning, but also because a lot of confusion came from reading various opinions and experiences and watching videos that are just different from what I ended up being led to through my own guidance, such as running and chasing, being positive and negative charged polarities, meaning that if one runs, the other automatically chases, which I don't agree with. Okay, so here's where I say this is my analogy, which applies to my journey. If you can relate, fine. If not, just use it as it works for you. So I understood the smoothie itself to be the soul. And from that, we're here in the 3D as the peach or the protein. And I think this is how we identify, not specific to our gender, but this would show up in our energy. And this can be different for you depending on your dominant energy here in the 3D, because at the soul level, our energy is fully in union. And even with our higher self, which we share our higher self with our twin and have our own, but they can merge as one. This video discusses that if you're interested. But our higher selves represent those traits that we identify as polar, but our higher selves are always balanced in those energies. For my counterpart, he would carry the protective energy, initiating energy, grounded energy, decisive energy, and so on. And I can be in those too, but those will more often be his expressions because his ego identifies more with the masculine traits, not male gender traits, but masculine energetic traits. Because as the soul, twin flame or not, when we're balanced with our soul, we embody all of those energies, masculine and feminine. It's part of yin and yang. But as twin flames, when we're balanced because of our shared consciousness, when we are acquiring their experiences or expressions, and I usually just say sensations, so when we're acquiring sensations, especially when we're physically interacting with them, we're in our divine energy, but we're also balanced with those between each other, with one in divine feminine and one in divine masculine. And this is where I talk about context in this video. But because we're balanced within ourselves, we're able to interact in the polarity of those energies harmoniously. And this is where we're on our best timeline with each other. Because if you think about it, this is how our higher selves would be merging. One is divine masculine and one is divine feminine, but balanced and in harmony, merging as one in union while still being whole in their own design. Because our higher self is like our navigation system to our soul of what we're humanly capable of being at the physical level. Because as humans, we're not able to be at that soul level frequency. So this is showing us where our best potential lies. Rather than repel each other like we can in the 3D, and again, it's not negative and positive charged repelling, but it may appear as that because it's polarity, where those traits can work together or they can be in opposition. But either way, we are a whole, and how we physically function with each other is dependent upon our balance with our soul. And if you look at the soul and at it as being shared, this makes perfect sense because your higher self is showing you how to be on your best timeline. That's where union is, because that's the design. As twin flames, that's our design. So, what I was seeing in my mind was like a triangle with the smoothie at the top, the peach to one side of the base, and the protein to the other side of the base. But I understood intuitively that we are each wholly our own design in the 3D, but that our source is where we are one, our soul, and how our physical bodies are bonded. So I was guided to look at my encounter with my twin at soul recognition. And this helped me to come into better understanding of info I had gotten back then. And though I understood certain aspects, there was still more for me to grow into with it. Realizing we were in our divine energy at that time, he was in his predominantly masculine and I was in my predominantly feminine. When we're balanced with our soul, we're balanced with each other. We are the smoothie. We're blended. I have some of his protein in me, and he's got my peach. So, yes, we are two components, each unique from the other, but are designed as the whole soul. And this actually makes me think of another thing that doesn't really resonate with me in the sense that it can be easily misconstrued. And that's how people say you're them and they're you. Yes, to an extent, we share energy, but they're also their own person with their life experiences and their ego. We potentially have access to each other, but it's not that we are them and they are us. And I just put this out there because I think this can cause confusion for some if they don't have an understanding for themselves of the shared energy. I believe we're gifted that soul frequency at soul recognition so we can know what it is that we're supposed to be balanced as, what that balance feels like, what union feels like, what our authenticity feels like. We're in our soul frequency. Not that we've necessarily grown into our physical and spiritual balance through our own efforts at that point, and likely have not. But at the time of soul recognition, I believe if we're not there already, we are divinely brought back to our soul frequency as it is designed for our human capability, because there is a difference. That's why the soul incarnates as consciousness to come to the lower vibration of this physical plane. We incarnated at that frequency, but throughout our life, we can get out of balance with that. Also, the experience of life is part of getting to that frequency again through knowledge, awareness, expression, and experiences. We are of the same source and are whole, but when we're together physically in our divine energy, we are our core feminine or masculine through our interaction with each other and are in that wholeness together as one. That's union. We are the smoothie, which is we're balanced with our soul. You're whole on your own as well, even though I believe you're not ever truly away from them, because there is a certain level of physicality we share with them, even when physically apart. The other part to that is if we're imbalanced when interacting, even when we're physically apart. So it could be face to face interactions, or it could be sending or receiving thoughts, sensations, but imbalanced. We're not blended as the smoothie, as the soul. We're not in our divine energy, but in our ego. So when I talk about balancing our soul essence, and I talk about that in this video here, the feminine intern is the conscious one of the journey. And though I believe the masculine intern, or MI, is consciously aware of the unique bond, they may not be awakened to the journey at the same time as the feminine intern and are often subconsciously maneuvered until they awaken. This is where I believe we can bring balance to each other through thought and intuition, because balancing our thoughts, our ego, with our intuition brings awareness. Just like how I said, it takes my mind a while to catch up to my intuition. I can rely on my intuition, but it only takes me so far if I don't have an understanding of what's being communicated. That's why one reason we're given a little at a time, but even trying to understand everything just through gaining knowledge without bringing in my intuition, that can only take me so far as well. We need balance to be balanced. Like we have to practice balancing in order to balance. So, what I started to touch on is that the one who is conscious of the journey, which is the FI, the feminine intern, that person's conscious level of ego is predominantly of feminine energy, whether divine energy or wounded energy. And remember, when you're in divine energy, your soul is the driver. You're in soul alignment. But when you're in wounded energy, your ego is the driver. And our conscious and subconscious mind are of the egoic mind. And some people believe our intuition comes from our subconscious. But I believe it's simply a tool that relays our intuition. in order for a mind to understand. So it's my belief that the feminine in turn subconscious is predominantly masculine energy. My twin will be the polarity, with their conscious level of ego predominantly masculine energy and their subconscious feminine. So the interesting thing about that is, as the FI, they're awakened to the spiritual journey first, and because of the shared flow of soul as consciousness through the chakras, again, my belief, they can potentially share the feminine energy as it's balancing. This is what's happening as we heal, as we improve self love. We can't see it happening, but in doing so, the energetic flow opens more. And this is what I believe awakens the MI, because this ties into their subconscious. And then when the MI does awaken to their journey, then the FI will experience more masculine balance through their subconscious, balancing with their conscious level of ego. It all ties in together. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like. And if you're interested in seeing more, subscribe. Thank you for watching.